All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, welcome. This is our regular City Council work session for Monday, March 20th. It is 10 a.m. We'll go ahead and get started. I would let people know that we are going to move one of our agenda items further back in our agenda. We're taking item D and moving it to the end of our agenda, so Mayor Pro Tem Bynum can actually leave the meeting. Because she lives in Otter Pond, she wants to recuse herself from those comments. All right, we'll go ahead and start off with our item A, our special thank you from CMU students. And Steve Matheny, our CMU campus director.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We have some really special guests with us today that wanted to talk to you. We have several students from Colorado Mesa University here at the Montrose campus that were beneficiaries of the Montrose Success Fund that the city of Montrose has put together. So with that, so we won't take too much more of your time, I want to introduce Chris Wilcox. He's our student services, and he will introduce a few of our students. So thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. I brought up some just demographics and trends to just briefly go over so you guys can kind of see. At this point in time, we're in the middle of our spring semester. We're on spring break actually, and these students even came in on their spring break. So just some kind of demographic stuff I'll go over real quick. We are up a little bit for this spring compared to last spring. So it's not a tremendous growth, but at least the bar graph is going in the right direction. A lot of that growth is because the high school program, our high school CTE morning programs, bounced back nicely. We're looking at enrollment trends going into fall, and we think there's going to be pretty strong demand. But the high school kind of really came back after, pre-COVID. We were dealing with a little bit of a post-COVID hangover, if you will. But I think we're beyond that now. I put that one on there, fall 19. So that one bar over there on the far right of that was our last term that went over 300 regular enrollments. And that's what we're shooting for again. So if we can get back to that or beyond, that will make us very, very happy. On page 2 is just a breakdown of what the typical Montrose student looks like. So we're at about 36% Hispanic. You'll see those age groups and gender. If you want to take a look at what is a typical Montrose student, it will be younger, under 24, and female. So on the other side of that coin, we wonder, where are all of the male students? So with nursing and some of those programs which have continued to grow, it's pulling in lots of just female students. So we've got to try to crack the nut on where all the male students are. And then next page, kind of see what type of degrees are our students going for. So we have some students, not a lot, but a few chose to do a certificate. That's mainly in the welding and machine shop area. Those are generally done as certificates. We have the non-degree in high school on the second bar there, over 60. And then seeing how many students have declared an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. You can see the bachelor's degree is still way ahead. That also means that we will have students who will start with us, and some of them will end up at main campus in a couple years down the road. With the exception of nursing, they go all the way through to a bachelor's degree with us. Kind of just a look ahead, expansion of facilities. So we see the work going on already out there on South 3rd Street. We're replacing some utility lines, and then that will end up continue our quad area out there adjacent to Cascade Hall, kind of continuing that quad. So that project's already ongoing. And then nursing, we now have everything covered from a CNA license all the way through to a bachelor's degree and RN. Yes, sir.
About that program, I was just curious, wasn't there some reasons why you couldn't add? There was only something about the sit down for their bar or for their thing. They didn't have enough people to do the
Clinicals.
The what?
The clinicals.
Probably, yeah, with nursing, with clinicals.
Yeah.
So one thing that actually does limit our students is not CMU and how many people can we put in a classroom. It's how many students can we actually put out in our community to do clinicals. So So they're there in our classrooms, they go over to our sim labs and all of that, but they do have to spend several hours in each area, each term, at the hospital, Montrose Hospital and Delta Hospital. And we can only put so many students over there. Right now, we have added another program, LPN, so that's as many as 20 more actually going into the hospital. However, that we actually adopted that program from TCR and Delta, so it was kind of an even match, but that really is the limiting factor on how many nursing students can we have. In Grand Junction, they spread them out over 4 hospitals, so they can increase the size of their program if they want to. So I already mentioned the LPN program's now going on. They've actually just selected the second round of students. I believe they had 35 students actually submit applications. A few were ruled out because they were not done. They weren't qualified yet. And last I heard, they were interviewing 14. So that's looking like our next LPN program, somewhere 13, 14. If someone gets knocked out with interviews, I don't know. Also, we had the start of the criminal justice program last year with the first program of the Western Colorado Law Enforcement Academy, and going into already into summer this year. I think the application process is officially over, and now they're going through all their applicants and screening them to see how many we'll have in there for this summer.
We still are accepting applications.
Oh, you are?
So we're going to accept them right until the very last minute.
Okay, very good. We've had a couple
Surprise.
people. Yeah.
Oh, by the
You
way,
just wander in, and I just say, you need to go over there real fast. I'll give them Sergeant Jones's contact information, go for that. And then just recently, there's been talk about us adopting an outdoor recreation program. They have that running down at main campus in Grand Junction. We actually think that the whole program should be here in Montrose because we have all the outdoor recreation, not to steal anything from the Grand Valley, but baby steps. We may get a little bit of that going on this fall. I think you heard enough from me, probably. We still need faculty. So any of those areas back there that says needs, those are classes we would like to schedule. However, we don't have faculty members. We don't even see anybody on the radar for some of those. So if you know anybody in those areas, come on down, talk to Steve. We did lose one of our classrooms, classroom 100. The actual problem happened upstairs in the science lab, room 200. There was a fitting blew out underneath the sink. Fortunately, a student was in the building. It was Saturday at about 6:30. Doing homework in the computer lab. She heard weird noise. Kind of freaked her out. She was like, look outside. Nothing. She went back, started working, hear the noise again. Finally, looked around the corner and water was pouring down through the ceiling from room 200 science lab directly into room 100, and it pretty much took it out. So it's down for the count right now, but we're hoping to get it back by fall. Any questions for me?
well, thank you, Chris. Appreciate your report on what's going
Thank
on.
you. I'm going to introduce Monica Gonzalez here. She is also one of our work study students, and you don't need to go to the podium.
Although you can if you'd like to.
That was too professional. I'm Monica Gonzalez. I'm a sophomore in college right now. My major is criminal justice. And my plan for the future is to come back and serve in my community. It's always been one of my high school goals. And I'm going to have to transfer to new campus. But right now, Montrose campus is really beneficial financially because you qualify for like the Montrose Success Fund, which, you know, gets granted by Montrose itself. And as our campus is growing, as Steve said, Chris said, sorry, as it's growing, we had an event these past 2 weeks, and a lot of high schoolers came, and one of their main concerns was the financial part of college. And being able to tell them that Montrose has this scholarship that they can receive for attending a Montrose County school, a lot of them were more interested in attending our Montrose campus, knowing that they get help from Montrose itself, Montrose like itself. So being able to like have that is really beneficial, and I just want to thank all you guys for doing everything you can for the Montrose campus.
Thank you.
My name is Eric Williams, and I am pursuing a degree in criminal justice. And I am a freshman in college, and I am mainly wanting to serve my community as well in the future and possibly join the Montrose Police Department. And I would actually like to personally thank you because this scholarship fund has allowed me to pursue my goals so far in college because my first year has had no maintenance. And it's a lot to do for me, and it's perfect. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Hi, I am Hania. I'm Hania. I graduated from Montrose High School, and I am pursuing my degree in criminal justice to become an immigration lawyer or a criminal justice lawyer, and a civil rights lawyer. And thank you to you guys. You give me an opportunity to study because I haven't paid a single cent from my pocket, and I got the opportunity to keep studying.
Thank you, Hania.
Hello, so I'm Isabella Serrano, and I graduated also from Montrose High School, and my major is business. And I just want to thank you all for the opportunity because it hasn't only helped me, but it also helped my parents being stress-free from having to pay for college and stressing about having to pay for the payment every month or for each semester. Because I also have a brother who goes to CMU, and so we have to help him. So that's helped us be stress-free. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Isabel. We appreciate you guys' comments. It takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of a group of people and talk. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That's a hang around.
All right, and you guys are welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but that's okay if you leave. We don't mind.
Thank you, guys.
All right, now we're going to move on to item B, ordinance appropriating funds for endowment fund and authorizing loan for 433 South First Street. And this is Assistant City Attorney Chris Dowsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. What this ordinance is going to do is, just as it says, appropriate funds. 2 weeks ago, when we made the agreement with CMU, we need to actually appropriate these funds as per the charter. Charter states that any appropriation of funds or authorization of borrowing of money has to be done by ordinance. Generally, this is going to be done by the budget process. However, obviously, we're a little after the budgetary process, so it's really just formalizing what was done 2 weeks ago. Be happy to answer any questions.
So this is just the ordinance that actually formalizes the language of what we've already discussed. And it's the kind of
yes and
making
no.
sure we're legally
Yeah.
compliant with the
Correct.
charter and all of our governing documents.
Yeah, this is really just allowing us to use the monies for what we stated 2 weeks ago.
Kind of a house cleaning ordinance. if you will.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Mr. Dowsey?
No, I think we covered it pretty good.
All right, thank you. Now moving on to item C, the Anderson Road paving contract award. City Engineer Scott Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the city budgeted for the paving of Anderson Road this year. So we've got it out to bid and are ready to award. I'll run through various pieces of that. So we are looking to pave, so Anderson Road, for anybody who doesn't know, is just south, kind of between Home Depot and East Oak Grove, about halfway down. It's originally built, I think as early as the 80s, as best we can tell. As a kind of a gravel commercial park directly off of Townsend. The city has been working to pave our gravel roads over time, but it takes time, and it takes money. So we've kind of been chipping away at them, doing one every year or so. And the area we're looking to pave, so Anderson Road has probably the most prominent businesses along here are the Hot Tub Productions right here on the north side, and Atco Transmission here on the south side. There's a bank right here at the corner of Commercial Way, just to kind of give everybody their bearings. McDonald's is down here towards the south. So this loops into Commercial Way. We're only paving it up to Commercial Way. Once you get past there, it kind of drops off. It gets a little more industrial feeling, and it'd be a road to nowhere. So we didn't want to have a nice new road in an area that, or spend a lot of money on paving to an area that's kind of more industrial to begin with. So once Rio Grande goes through over here off the page, that's probably when it makes sense to finish the extension of Anderson to make that connection and have it paved all the way through. But for now, it's just kind of been in this gravel configuration since
made in the 80s, no pedestrian accommodations, get gravel track out on the towns. And so the kind of primary drivers are obviously to bring it up to an urban standard, since it's now in the middle of the city. When it initially developed, it was probably a little further out, and have the safe pedestrian accommodations. Designed initially in-house by the city, we got it pretty close to being ready to bid a couple years ago. I think it was the year we did the Sunnyside roundabout. That project ended up being larger, so we cut Anderson Road at that time. So that would have been 2017 or so, somewhere in there. So it was kind of sat on the shelf. When we went back to go this time, we're a lot busier now. We used to design a lot of these things in-house. We didn't have the resources that this year, so we had Delmont Consultants help us with some of the final grading, and went out to bid. We got 4 bids, which is pretty good for what we're seeing this year, with contractors as busy as they are. We were a little elevated though. Cost came back $639, $873 was the low bid. We figured this product would cost about $500, but material costs, primarily concrete and asphalt and aggregates, are all substantially up. You think eggs are bad, wait till you buy asphalt. So the unit rates we're seeing on the product are consistent with what we're kind of seeing in this newer world pricing. So the price is good, just elevated. That does place us, so we have the construction contract 639 and Skip Houston, Marty Guy is here with Skip Houston Construction, the owner. We have that expenditure as well as $40,000 that we use for survey stakeout on an as-needed basis. Usually those numbers are high, usually those come in under. So between the two brings us to the 679, 873. Again, the budget was 500, and so that places us 180 over budget. This project's small enough that we're not going to make all that up just in contingency and underuse of road base. So we would even under the best case scenario, which usually projects come in favorable, we're likely to still be over the 500. So somewhere between 500 and 680. So any overage would be supplemented with either fund balance from unused funds on other projects or a budget supplement if that doesn't cover. I will kind of say we do appear to be firmly into so these projects, they're great projects, in town, greenfield construction for the most part, not a lot of complication, and there's these prices are still, and we're bidding them earlier than we typically get all our projects out. So really favorable conditions, the prices are still high. It's a product of just how busy the contracting community is and what supplies have done. So like I said, those core aggregates and those core inputs are high and seem to be staying high for a while. So it's, it'll be an interesting budget season this year as we start incorporating a lot of this new pricing into what we are able to do with our funds.
Do you think the aggregate pricing being high is because of the high demand, because of a lot of projects going on around the community?
So, asphalt's part of aggregates. Asphalt's highest due to a lot of material and oil uncertainty. The Suncor refinery was shut down in the Front Range, which was a primary supplier of the asphalt in the area. Aggregates, I think it's just a product of, supply and demand. We've seen aggregates and concrete. Concrete's a little more complicated with, fly ash sources drying up with coal fire plants coming off and stuff like that. So that, among other market forces, are driving up concrete as well. Aggregates are probably the lowest increase. Concrete and asphalt are the larger that we're seeing.
So you're saying maybe we should use eggshells?
Yeah, cheaper.
Might save us money?
Yeah, just to give you a
recycle tires.
Feel for scale. So some of the concrete bids, like $180 a ton, where 115 to 120 was the typical. That's a lot. You put down a lot of tonnage.
So just a curiosity for me, and possibly, I'm sure Jim might be able to weigh in this. We have from our milling projects, and we're using that mill product for a lot of our trails and stuff. Can we use some of the excess mill product for some of the substrata work on the road base? Or is it appropriate material for that?
It can be used as a fill in certain areas. I think directly under the asphalt, there'll need to be a material that can be a structural component, usually a class 6 road base, but we definitely do use it for fill in other areas. Same with a lot of the materials from our pit, crushed concrete or even concrete pieces we've used to fill other areas. So we try to be creative when we're filling voids, and trails for sure. That's where we use probably the majority of those millings is to fill and level out areas under a trail.
Similar to what we're doing over on Ogden.
Correct. Yeah, that's a great example of where we're using those millings.
Yeah, and we consider that pretty heavily on this project, 'cause we have a stockpile at the end of Anderson from previous year's millings. For a structural section within the road, sometimes we can use it as the lower, there's kind of 3 layers of a road, the asphalt, a higher grade aggregate that's usually about 6 inches thick, and then a subbase, which is, foot to 2 thick. We have been able to use it on the bottom layers sometimes if the fines content is low enough. Sometimes the millings, they're too dirty. They have too many fines that they wouldn't drain properly, and you'd start getting some undesired, freeze thaw and heave and movement. So in this case, a lot of the millings in Anderson were a little on the dirtier side, so that's why they're being used on the great for trails and shouldering, but we are incorporating all virgin material into this project for that reason.
Perfect.
But we do try and use them whenever we can.
I've got a question, if you guys can hear me.
Barbara has a question.
Yeah, the total cost isn't just the street, right? This is a total project with curb, gutter, and sidewalk. Is the sidewalk on both sides or is it on one side?
It's on both sides.
So for those who couldn't hear, Mayor Pro Tem Bynum asked if the project isn't just the asphalt, it's also curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and whether or not the sidewalk would only be on one side. So that was the answer is it is on both sides.
Correct. Yep.
The other question I had was, when you go down Anderson Road, parking is kind of a random right now because of the gravel component. How is this going to address that parking along that section, especially for those businesses?
Yeah, kind of 2 ways. So we did design it as drive-over curb the whole length. Pretty atypical for a commercial park. However, the way this area developed is, there's kind of row parking in front of some businesses, and it is pretty haphazard. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't limiting business access anywhere. So drive-over curb the whole way so that any existing access points and parking on the properties will be maintained. And then the rest will become parallel parking on the street. So like on the ATCO side, there's no other businesses, so there's quite a bit of row parking there. On the Hot Tub Productions, which is the other largest kind of traffic producer, all of their frontage would remain open to drive over, so all those nose-in spaces remain there. And then the others, they're more residential, and they'll still have access at their driveways.
That section that beyond where we're paving on down to what is kind of the end of it now, is that all city right away through there?
That's all city right of way, and that's pretty challenging. If you've been down there, there's been a lot of use of that right of way. Don't know what the answer is to that one, but kind of one of the primary reasons it didn't feel appropriate to pave that now, given that condition and that likely those businesses are obviously overflowing. That's a problem in itself of how to deal with that one.
But separate from this?
Separate from this, yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy?
How long is that, the lineal footage on that road that's being asphalted?
I can tell you. I want to say 600 or so. It'll be about $1,250 a foot if that's the ultimate question you're after. $1,250 per lineal foot.
Oh, no, I was just asking.
I can tell you that
how many lineal footages?
But I forgot the denominator.
It says on the, I thought it said on here.
I didn't.
But I can't.
Maybe I didn't see it.
You got to just add up the lineal sections.
So we're looking about, 550.
550 lineal foot. Okay.
Yep.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Seeing none, we will move on to what was item E, the 2023 park mower purchase recommendation. And this is Public Works Manager Jim Scheid.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation to buy or to replace 3 parks mowers. And we'd like to replace them with a Toro mower from Roaring Fork Rentals in Glenwood. The total of all 3 of those combined is $51,423. And so again, this is for in-house use for our city crews, using them to maintain Cedar Creek Cemetery, Sunset Mesa Ball Fields, and then a few of our remaining parks that we we maintain in-house. It's about a total of 95 acres. These mowers would be the primary ones we use for that mowing. Warring Fork Rentals is the regional vendor for Toro, and we've, in the last few years, have begun to standardize towards Toro at the Black Cannon Golf Course and in our park division with great success. They're a great mower, great support, and again, trying to keep them a little more consistent throughout our entire fleet.
Does that make your repair considerably easier when you have snow?
Yeah, a little bit more expected. Sometimes we know, and we can even stock items that we know may be something that goes out frequently or just wear items. We can obviously stock those a lot easier when we only have one brand versus stocking several different brands. And we have good support too. That's part of it, that Toro's been good to work with when it comes to those repairs or additions, things like that, or even buying new mowers. So we are recommending approval of a sole source in that regard, for that this is we're standardizing to that type of equipment. But we know that our pricing that we're receiving is fair, because we're using a cooperative purchasing agreement and government pricing through what they call a tax exempt bid support program, and that is what that is. We're using other pricing that have been awarded to government agencies in the past, so therefore we know our pricing is fair. As far as our budget, we included $49,200 in our budget for 2023 for these replacements, which is slightly under what their cost is now. Similar to other things, we get them quoted in the mid-year. We had inflation that we're expecting, and this one ended up being slightly under what the quoted price is now as well. The good news is that we actually did collect more than that in our fleet fund over these last 8 years. So it is over what we budgeted, but we did collect more in our fleet fund. So over budget by about $2,000, but under what was collected by about $4,000.
So we won't have to do a budget amendment or
Correct.
any other items like this. The fleet
Right.
fund has adequate resources to be able to do
Exactly. Yeah, I know that we've utilized the fleet fund for other overages on several other purchases, and in this case, the fleet fund would actually save some money in this purchase, even though it's over budget, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I have nothing else to add unless you have any questions.
Hey, just out of curiosity, do they have a snowplow attachments for one of these things?
Not these larger ones. We do actually use that in some of our really small ones. We can use them downtown on the sidewalks.
Okay.
But these are pretty big. They wouldn't fit on a lot of our smaller sidewalks. We use a different type of equipment to clear our bigger trails. So we have a tool cat with a brush on it that we'll use, and a plow that we'll use on our bigger trails. So these wouldn't be quite the best for snow removal.
Okay, I was just curious.
I'm not sure if they make a platform.
Since you mentioned that, I'm just kind of curious, you mentioned that brush that we use.
Mm-hmm.
When are we going to start doing, cleaning up all the winter debris off of our trails and sidewalks?
So we've begun some of that now. So a lot of our street sweepers are back out already, just because temperatures have been good enough for that. We'll probably do a wash down. You usually see us in the springtime do a big wash down of all the medians, gutters, and flush out all the drainages, usually end of March, so coming up right now. Your eyeballing, we're kind of watching temperatures, because we don't want it to freeze after we do that. It just creates black ice and other issues, so we're careful with temperatures and weather, but really end of March, beginning of April is our time frame to wash everything down, and that includes trails. Many of those we've already begun, and probably see us out doing that now.
Yeah, maybe with the rain that's supposed to come this week, it'll get partially washed down.
Yeah.
Well, more likely they'll have stuff wash onto them. We know how that works. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Scheid? All right. In that case, we will. Yes.
Could I interject? I had a staff report for you, and I didn't realize Barbara was going to not stay for the whole meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
Could I do that right now?
Absolutely. That'd be great. Let Mayor Pro Tem Bynum
It's basically just a scheduling issue. We always talk the first part of the year about when we're going to have our big picture meeting for the 2024 budget, and then the retreat. So I just thought if we could schedule the big picture meeting, it's amazing how fast this year is going, and so I was kind of looking at calendars, and it kind of seemed like the week of April 17th might work, but I wanted to Usually we try to do it the first part of May. May is going to be kind of busy for me. We're going to do audit in May. So I was hoping maybe that would work, but if not, we can definitely entertain other ideas for that meeting.
It looks like we don't have anything scheduled for April 20th currently. And we do try to,
Usually all day, right? We do an all-day meeting for that?
This is usually about a 2 to 3 hour meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really just kind of getting the feel for which direction to go. Scott usually takes over the meeting. You know, projects just tend to be that big picture item. So, but it's usually a 2 to 3 hour meeting.
We have all-day employee training on the 19th and 20th,
Oh,
but the afternoon after council is wide open.
maybe the 17th after
17th.
work session.
Make for a long day, but we could bring in lunch and
yeah, that works for me. How about you guys? Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Barbara, does that work for you?
And then we can talk, maybe at the next work session, we can talk about the retreat in September, towards the latter part of the year. So,
do a save the date for it.
yeah. And I'll send out a meeting request for this one.
Okay, the 17th work. Sounds good. So that seems to work for everyone.
Okay.
Why don't we go ahead and send out a notice for that?
Okay, thank you.
Is there a time? I didn't
It's
catch.
going to be just
Follow
after.
the work session with lunch and then just stay
Okay.
in the afternoon.
Yeah, we currently have a placeholder on our calendar for
After
a
work.
special council meeting that we
Session.
might
I
not need
like
that.
that
So.
better than another separate day, because I usually cancel out my whole day from work or whatever, or doctor's appointments and all that stuff for Monday and part of Tuesday, so,
Perfect.
So that works.
yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll, once we have that big picture meeting, as we get further along, we'll schedule that time for the budget retreat, which is the all-day meeting, and we'll schedule that later on.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Perfect. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other staff reports we want to discuss while Mayor Pro Tem Bynum is on the Zoom call?
Did you want to do 2A report card now, or?
Barbara, would you like to do the 2A report card now, or are you comfortable with what we have printed in the packet? Is she still on
I
the,
think we're frozen. Oh, or she's frozen.
I think she just fell off.
Oh.
we'll just wait.
Sounds good.
All right, so in that case, I'll send her a text message.
There she is, she's back.
Can she hear us?
Can you hear us, Barbara?
I can now, yeah, I don't know, I lost it for a second. The last thing I asked at that meeting, all-day budget retreat is usually in September, and that's when we'll decide on exactly when we meet on April. We'll decide exactly when in September.
Correct.
And Barbara, did you want to hear Chief's report on the 2A report card now,
Yes.
or? Perfect.
Yes, I'd like to stay for everything except maybe the last item, the audit conflict.
Perfect. Then Chief will go ahead and give us our 2A report card. And that is in our packets. Also, that will be published in our City Beat newsletter coming up in April. So if the public wants to see more of that, the general public members will be able to see all of that presentation on that. Chief?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So this is the first quarter of our presentation of the 2A report card based on the 2A initiative back in November 5th of 2019. And I know that Shani always reports on our public safety sales tax that was passed. 43% of the general fund in 2023 equates to $8.36 million, which will go to public safety. This particular report card, I'm also using it as an opportunity to kind of recap 2022 We did not have, to my knowledge, a 2A report card in 2022. I wanted to talk mainly about hiring. Currently, Montrose Police Department has 46 sworn officers. We're higher than we have been in the past. Hiring does look like it's on an uptick. I think the main thing that we are still having issues with is just getting individuals to pass our background investigations. We had 8 initially in our hiring process, and we've lost 3 of those primarily due to the polygraph. They either cancel right before taking it or they don't pass. And so we are still looking at about 10 individuals that will attend the police academy this summer. However, those are a myriad of different students from Durango, Gunnison, Montrose County Sheriff's Office, and the Montrose Police Department. In 2022, we hired a total of 8 new officers. We had 6 departures. 2 of those were forced resignations, not to get too much into it, and then 1 was because that person didn't complete training. So we're still in the positive side of it. We are 90% completed on construction of the new building. New building is completely operational, but we are looking at this spring replacing the parking structure because it was installed incorrectly. So that will be no additional cost or very little additional cost to the city. That's something that the contractor is taking care of. And I can
Chief,
answer-
will they be, will we be looking at including the solar panels that we had generally thought of in this reiteration of that parking structure?
I think, yeah, that's definitely an option, but I think that's something that we should discuss internally, probably as a staff, and then if you want recommendations, we can certainly move forward. So.
But at this time, we're not.
No, right
Okay.
now, we're not.
We're
That's
just
not
having
part
the
of it.
contractor fix
What they didn't
put.
install correctly.
We are researching the cost of that, trying to get closer to a ballpark number so we can speak to that a little bit better. There has, been a lot of interest in that and requests, and weren't exactly sure what the cost is. And we had it quoted back when it was an alternate in the project early on, 2020. And that time we didn't accept it as part of the project, but now we're re-quoting it and getting a little bit closer on what that would cost now. So this is why we could speak to it. If it comes up, we can present those numbers as to what that could cost.
Perfect, that'd be great.
We're
Sorry to
trying
interrupt.
we're trying to close out the punch list with all the items that just weren't done correctly.
Ed's pockets singing at us.
I apologize, I thought I turned it off.
All right,
I guess
Chief.
I didn't.
Just a couple more things. I think it's really important to note that we did hire 1 former Colorado State Patrol officer who we will be putting in the schools as soon as he has completed training. And that was perfect for us because Officer Dennis Berry retired this last year. And so we were down in the school resource officer section. I am very committed to getting a 4th school resource officer hired and put into the schools for this coming August. I think that's extremely important. Some of the things that we've been doing with the new building, a lot of training, and we had made a commitment that we would open the building up as far as training for the entire region to be able to use the building free of charge. And one of our main customers has actually been the state of Colorado with drug recognition expert training. We've had some interview interrogation classes for community corrections. We call it A-RIDE, but it's essentially advanced DUI detection training. And then probably one of the best trainings which just completed just this last week was a mental health crisis intervention training. And that's a week-long class where actors come in and actually train police officers on how to interact with individuals who are having a mental health crisis. So it's fantastic. And then I'd like to close just with some of our public communication. As you know, We had a crime prevention business meeting here about a month ago now, and we announced the theft reduction and prevention grant. Currently, we're working with our public safety attorney, and we are essentially creating the rules of that committee. And then we also have 6 police officers that immediately signed up to be trained in crime prevention through environmental design, which is a survey assessment that we'll offer to our business community as part of going through these different applications and seeing how best we can authorize the release of those funds. So it's ongoing. We have 3 officers going to Utah this next week, and then another 3 in Billings, Montana for a month-long training. And then by that time, we plan on opening up for grant applications. It's been very busy as far as the number of applications that
I apologize.
you're fine.
He tried 3 times to shut his phone off, and it's just not wanting to play.
Anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we've had several business members call us, and we're concerned that they may have missed the grant opportunity. So to be clear, it hasn't been offered yet, but it will be offered soon as we have the capacity to offer that to the community.
And we have a grant committee already being put in place
We
to
do.
evaluate those grant applications. So as they start coming forward, we'll have that opportunity. And you're going to make a public announcement when that
We will.
grant cycle opens.
We will make sure that everyone knows that the grant is open and it's a competitive grant and that it's time to apply.
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Any questions for Chief Hall concerning our 2A report card?
I just had one, but you answered it, and that was on the departures. It's nice to know why they leave, but just an idea.
All right. Are there any other staff reports that we would like to do while Barbara is on the line?
I'll just do a quick general update. So we were going to discuss this week the South Third Plaza that's been bid and awarded. The budgets did come back quite a bit higher, or the bids came back quite a bit higher than the budget. So we're actually working with CMU to trim that and plan to bring that to the next work session. So for anybody who's expecting it, still in the works, just getting it back into the budget. We think we're there. Still have a pretty good project, and yeah. So just wanted to not leave you hanging if anybody was wondering why that wasn't on the agenda.
One thing I wanted to mention and ask while we're in this format is the status of the city council chambers, and when do we get to go home?
Yeah.
It's nice visiting, but we're ready to go home.
Great question. So actually, Ann just mentioned I should give an update on that. So we are on schedule as far as construction goes to be completed about the end of March. That was their original schedule, and they're on schedule for that. So really, by early next week, we should have substantial completion. Carpet was one of the issues. It was delayed a little bit, but it actually is going to work out fine. I think we should be completed early next week. So that brings in our IS team when we start setting up all of our IS equipment and moving all the furniture back and things like that, which is following our City Hall moves. So we're trying to sequence those moves to where we're not doing the both of them at the same time. So long answer to say that we're targeting the second meeting in April to be our first meeting back in the Elks building. So that would be April 17th would be a work session in the new, or back in the old council chambers. And that would come with all the other meetings as well, Planning Commission, Historical Preservation, council meetings on Tuesday nights, all of the meetings that were held there and are currently in this room will move back into there. It'd be that third week of April, April 17th. I think we're targeting later that same week, April 20th would be the first court that would be held back in that room. And then we'll start to transition some of the uses of the Centennial Room to the new City Hall and actually into this room as well. So by the end of April, kind of looking at how we're reusing this room and the Centennial Room, new City Hall, and all those things, because they're all tied together. I'm kind of waiting on this move back to the Elks building to initiate those as well. So, yes.
Excellent. And all of these meetings, as they become rescheduled into the old or new council chambers, will be posted and noted in all of our normal locations. So if anybody has any questions about where those meetings are going to be held, that will be posted in as we move into that stage. Chief?
One thing I'd like to bring up, and it's timely based on Jim's comments, is that we have the time capsule right here that we wanted to schedule. So I think April 3rd, perhaps maybe after a work session, we could get a mason to essentially take that piece of stone off and perhaps have some letters, some video, some different memorabilia that we could seal in there and make sure to include you, Mr. Mayor, and City Council, along with our city staff.
You're gonna put me in there? That's gonna be take a lot more masons than you thought.
Is this where we're not supposed to comment on anything?
I guess.
It's empty right now, but we want to make sure before you guys leave that we're able to do that. So
Perfect.
April 3rd might be good time to do that, if that works.
Sounds good. If you just keep us updated with an email. Anything else? In that case, we will excuse Mayor Pro Tem Bynum, allow her to sign off, and we'll move on to agenda item D, which is our final item now, the Otter Pond Dam Utility Relocation Project, and this is City Engineer Scott Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm joined here by the HOA as well, so they'll chime in at some point. I don't know if you've heard about the Otter Pond story with some of the challenges they've had with the embankment itself. So I'll tell that story and where we kind of have some overlap in it with some of our utilities. I'll start with the story. Started in the mid-90s, they developed the Otter Pond area. For anybody not familiar, this is Otter Pond Dam. It's a private dam, part of the neighborhood subdivision owned and maintained by the HOA. The embankment itself is not kind of what you would think of as a typical dam. So much so that, it kind of fell under the purview of the state for a long time. But when you drive over it, this is the street view of the, outlet area. It's not much. You have the pond and its outlet here on the, upstream side, on the south side of the road, and then it dives off into a lower area here. You can see the community rec center in the background there, and the Lutzenheiser Canal runs right at the toe right here.
So Scott, just to be clear for the public that this is a city street?
Otter Pond Circle is a public right-of-way. The street itself, the dam and its outlet works are all private. So we essentially just have a city street on top of a private dam. So the dam was built, again, in the mid-90s. Let me kind of go back to the historic aerial photographs. It's kind of interesting how much has changed, obviously, since then. So this is the same footprint there, 1990, I think there's one a little sooner. Oh, 93 is the latest. So this was right before Otter Pond had started construction. Camelot Gardens is still there as a reference point. No Home Depot yet. Some of Vista San Juan. I think, this is what whenever we did Oak Grove, everyone talked about this being the outskirts. The end of town is right here. It was built by impounding. This is the Bureau of Reclamation's F-Drain. Bureau of Reclamation is the owner. Uncompahgre Valley Water Users Association is the operator. So a lot of time those get used interchangeably. But it's their F-Drain. It's a irrigation return flow drain. They kind of built that by building up the embankment across here and borrowing a lot of material from here, and then using share water to fill and create flow through that actually creates the dam itself, or the lake itself. Starting last summer, the city started to receive calls about subsidence in the roadway at the north end, right at the outlet works. Quickly got our crews out there, ran cameras down the line, saw that the outlet works were fully structurally compromised. They consist of two, either 20 or 24-inch corrugated metal pipes that, really simple, just run through the embankment. Had pretty steep grade, so CMP pipes don't do the best around here anyway. We have pretty corrosive soils, and then you add on top of that a really steep grade. It had corroded away the bottoms of the pipes to the point that it could then start, as that water passed over, which it flows through most of the summer, just in equals out. And starts taking soil with it. So that soil starts to move, starts to create a cavern. Eventually that cavern can't support itself and it starts to fall into itself. At the same time, the HOA reached out to Division of Water Resources, Division of Dam Safety. They're set up into regions. The dam safety engineer for this region is officed here in Montrose, so they were able to get out there, I think the same day. Started to do an inspection and kind of had that, yep, this is an emergency. You need to start drawing down the reservoir. You could lose the embankment. There was then question of, do they have jurisdiction over it? So at this point, it was not permitted with the Bureau of Reclamation or the state. So as you can imagine, the state does have jurisdiction and rules and regulations that apply to dams and impoundments within the state, but only of a certain size. So, they don't want to get in the middle of every little farmer's thing if it's inconsequential, if it fails, if it's small enough. So the first question was, does the state truly have jurisdiction over this dam? That was dependent on a couple of factors, primarily how much volume is being impounded, how deep is the head on the dam itself, and then what are the consequences of failure. So through that process, the state went and modeled the flood hazard associated with this embankment. So they say if this were to fail, what would the impacts be? And with the city, since getting closer, the urban areas closer to this, it was pretty substantial. If this reservoir were to fail, you would have flooding into the community rec center site, down a lot of Woodgate, so it'd kind of run down, some would get up in Dry Cedar Creeks, that would get overwhelmed, a lot of it would go down north, down Woodgate. Pretty substantial property damage in the, I would estimate, tens of millions. Could be a big deal. So it's a situation that needed to be stabilized. The state ordered emergency drawdown of the reservoir, and the HOA responded quickly, started to draw that down. At that point, the city got folded in as well from a flood hazard and protection of the city standpoint. The city did contribute $100,000 of ARPA funds towards this project to kind of help get that going, to stabilize the situation essentially. And that's, so the situation is stable. The reservoir has been drawn down to a level that the state dam safety engineer is comfortable that the head is just off of those issues. You don't have water flowing through the embankments anymore. It's stable for that condition, but it does need to be remedied long term. So the HOA hired Applegate Group, which is a civil engineering consulting firm that specializes in dams, water resource work. They have been working on the design of the replacement. As I got going into that, it became pretty apparent that the city's utilities, which run through the dam, so when this was built, the water and sewer, as is typical of kind of city streets, run in the streets and loop around. They didn't really, I think when this was built in the 90s, I don't think really anyone thought of it as a dam. Good, bad, or indifferent. The developer obviously didn't go to the state and build that, and they built it just like they would a city street. And with that, they built the utilities in the middle of the street. So the water and sewer run right down parallel to the embankment through there. As they got into their design, started to become apparent that two major issues come from that. One was the sanitary sewer line. The grade that it's on is actually in physical conflict with where their outlet work needs to be. So with this new design, they'll have to design it to modern dam safety standards with all of the, kind of like we did with Cerro. You take the old dam out, take the old outlet works out, put in new that's got the proper valving, proper controls, properly sized for the storm events to meet all of the state's rules and regulations, because it is under their jurisdiction. In order to do that, you have a pretty big pipe. That pipe is in conflict with the sanitary sewer. Also challenging to try and construct a dam with a water line in the middle of it and meet all the dam safety standards. So challenges that come from having utilities in the middle of the dam. Obviously, if there's ever a water line leak, you can have erosion that comes with that leak, and that needs to be excavated typically on short order to stabilize that situation. And then to do that, you're drawing down the reservoir in an emergency situation again. And then to backfill that, you're having to backfill it to a dam safety standard. So all of a sudden now, what would be a simple utility repair to dig up and backfill becomes a pretty substantial deal that would involve the state, and they would have to review and approve. And the same thing can be said for the sanitary sewer. Good.
Mystery Inlet? I'm kind of curious. When I saw that, it was like a mystery inlet.
Oh, on this. Oh, that was.
Yeah.
That was my guys on their drawing. They went out and surveyed all these manholes to check all the grades to make sure everything was going to work. And there was a lateral line coming into this sanitary sewer manhole that they didn't know where it came from. It's possibly, that's not uncommon. We see manhole stubs that, they stub it for some future use and then it doesn't come to fruition. So there's just an empty stub.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that on Townsend.
Yeah, so, could have chose better words there. I apologize.
Yeah, I just thought that was pretty funny.
It is kind of funny. It's engineers trying to be funny.
Yeah.
So what we're recommending is to kind of eliminate the constructability problems that having the utilities within the embankment, continuing on this course now that we're building to a modern standard with the state, plus the potential costs and risks that it creates for the city to have to maintain these lines. We are recommending rerouting these out and around the embankment. You're still somewhat within the zone of influence of the embankment. This is a residential lot that hasn't developed yet, but you're a little over here you're a little closer. You're still within the influence zone. It still has some special design considerations, but it's a lot better than being smack dab through the middle of the embankment the whole way. The idea being here, we would run a new HDPE butt fused water line, so a seamless pipe or jointless pipe that typically once built and pressure tested, you're usually not touching for 100 years. So one and done, get it out of the way. And then on the sanitary sewer, fortunately, there's a secondary line that runs back here. We have the grade that you could run the sewer line, get that up into this line here. This parcel that we'd be going across is owned and maintained by the HOA, so we'd have to pursue an easement from them for the utility relocations. But at first cut, they seem amenable to that. The cost to do so, go back so I don't forget, it's about $235,000 between the two, so $140,000 of that to be associated with water, $95,000 to sewer. That's I think a pretty conservative estimate. It's pretty poor construction conditions in that swampy area, cutting into hillsides, things of that sort. That if you did it the wrong time of year, your prices would be high. If you can time it, get the timing right, do it like January when water's low and the ground's frozen, your costs would get a lot better. So we're kind of hopeful we can work with the HOA to time that properly with their project. But talking to the state, this kind of work would likely have to be folded into their overall construction project. Because it still is within the zone of influence of the dam, we would work with their designer. They would actually incorporate that into their project plans and be under their purview and their inspection, because there's a lot of elements that have to be certified with the state and the design engineer. And so those are details that are being worked out. But we are recommending fitting this in. So this obviously was kind of an emergency product, unbudgeted. If we were to pay, it'd be $235. If it happens this year, it'd be out of unused fund balance or supplement if necessary. Or if the schedule does carry into where this would happen in 2024, it's something that we could budget for. But how we decide to approach this kind of steers how they handle their product, since there is obvious overlap there. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to the HOA to give kind of their update on where they're at with the project.
Actually, if you don't mind, Scott, I'm going to answer some questions before we do that, because rather than diverting. I see we're doing on the east side of the structure on the dam, we're going to try to tie it in the sanitary sewer into that lower line near the Lutzenizer. What about the west side? Is that going to change where the mystery inlet is?
So that one already runs outside of the area of influence, so that one is in place and would be left alone. And we haven't had any problem with that line. So if were to be a product on that in the future, it would probably be like a lining product, which wouldn't change any, and it's not in conflict with anything proposed for the dam. So that one's pretty low risk to stay as it is. Perfect.
Any other questions for Scott real quick?
Scott, are there any concerns about any of the homes that are fairly close to that dam? Are they?
I don't know if the HOA is aware of everything. From our side of the world, everything we're doing with utilities and stuff is manageable. wouldn't create any problems, certainly. Everything that's going on with the dam is, fortunately, that's not a residential lot immediately adjacent to the problem area. And their excavation limits are about from here to here with their kind of removal and replacement under their current design. So this will remain unchanged here. You have enough kind of mass there that's a lower risk. And so they're replacing everything within this skinnier area, which is the most prone structurally to, you want to make sure that's built to a modern standard. And that's also the area that encapsulates all the problem areas they've had with the erosion and failure of the existing outlet works. So anything being done here should drastically improve this situation. There's nothing in particular.
Do we have an idea of where the outlet of that pipe will be in relation to our new placement of sewer and water?
So it's going to follow more or less the same alignment. So new headworks here. The pipe will be a lot deeper because it kind of free falls down into a lower pipe because you have to be able to drain the reservoir. That's one of the state requirements. Right now, if they had to drain the reservoir, they have to pump up and over or siphon up and over the road. The outlet will daylight somewhere about right here into kind of there's the remnants of the F drain that run right through the middle here.
Yeah,
so
well,
to armor that, and we make sure that this is armored so that the water line is free.
Yeah, I was just concerned that it might have some kind of impact if you have to drain it again, or if we continue to get a lot of water.
There's erosion on that bank.
Yeah, on that bank, and how
So this
it might
thing
impact
flows.
it.
It flows all irrigation season long, essentially. So the design of this outlet works would be to accommodate not just the base flows, but any major storm flows come into this area as well. So that the max flood that this area would experience, it gets designed so that's fully protected, so that you won't, have headwall erosion that migrates back and compromises the impact.
Okay, but that will be included in the design?
That'll be part of the dam replacement project. Yep.
So that armor that entire basin past our water line?
I asked them if they're going the whole way. I think once they get past the water line, it's probably the extent that they're armoring. The slopes are such that they're stable at that point. And they have to prove that out to the state to demonstrate. But most likely they would kind of armor up to this toe area here.
Okay. Any more questions for Scott? Thanks.
Okay. What'd you like to add to the story?
I think all I would add is we've had Lambert and Associates do geotech studies. There have been major holes drilled not only at the street level down to what kind of soil is under the road, but on the embankments to make sure they're stable as well. So that in the design of the new dam, if we have to bring in soil to stabilize, that is part of the plan. Depending on what is decided on the utility relocation, then our engineer, Craig Ullman with Applegate, is then going to put together an entire submittal package to the state. The state will take their time in reviewing and then coming back with comments, resubmit again until everybody's happy with how that's going to look. Scott will be very much involved in that because that project will now be incorporated in ours. January 2024 for the utility to be done, if that's an option, works for us. And then we would start with the complete dam rebuild in March and April, so that when the fields start irrigating and the water starts to come back into the pond, we've got the new dam in place. In the meantime, we have to keep the restriction level low, which we will be working on. And we're carefully monitoring. So far, there is no damage to any homes in any way, shape, or form. This particular project caught all of us by surprise. And we had an annual meeting, and it is going to be privately funded by special assessments to the homeowners.
So and you're saying that it would work better for you to do it in spring of 2024?
If the utilities are going to be relocated, we are perfectly fine waiting until that work is done before we actually rebuild the dam. And so we would just make that work.
That's be early January, early 2024.
Yes.
As opposed to later in 2024.
Yeah, because I think their goal has been to refill by April 2024.
To have the dam complete.
Like
by
done.
April.
The reason I ask that is because of our budgetary process.
Right.
That if we incorporate it into our 2024 budget, it's a little easier for us to move those numbers around to make it make sense, rather than trying to do a supplemental budget for it at the end of this year. Although, if exigent circumstances exist.
And you could do a little bit of a hybrid too. You could start, even if you started, say, December, you'd only have the first cut of those dollars, and maybe 20% are spent in 23 and the remaining 80% in 24 budgeted. There's a couple ways to skin that.
Because we had that ARPA money we had allocated toward this. Is that already?
We already did that part.
Already been spent?
This will be over and above.
The problem is it's irrigation water. So as soon as the water is turned on in April, it starts flowing through, even tailwater, groundwater. So if you say, oh, you can work on it in April or May, no, we have to accommodate all the farmers around.
Yeah, and same goes for the utility work. So you can imagine trying to tie into this manhole with the Lutzenheiser Canal full, 8 foot deep or something.
So,
But yeah.
Scott, are you saying we should look at budgeting about 80% in the 2024 budget? And then
It's uncertain at this point, so we'll see how it comes into focus, because it'll depend on the state's review timeline as well, of when they'll get to go ahead on the project as a whole. So that'll kind of come into focus. Ideally, this work would start, the earliest would be November, so after the Lutzenheiser turns off for the year, which is usually Halloween. I would say it's pretty much impossible construction-wise to, make this tie-in with the canal full. You're only, 10 feet, 15 feet off the bank of the canal. I don't think the water users would go for it because it could threaten their infrastructure. So I think the earliest we'd see utility work would be November. There's about probably 6 to 8 weeks of work. So if everything went really, really well and they start early, you might, and obviously any kind of contract approval. At this point, we're just looking for general direction, but with the work itself, to authorize the expenditure would come before council, so we can kind of figure out budgeting at that point and what the reserves are looking like. But could be any of that. Start as early as November. You may hit it all in 2023 if everything goes well, or may hit it all in 2024 if the review timeline is a little longer with the state.
I think just the flood risk alone, to me, that I'm really surprised that it would overflow the Lutzenheiser to the point of flooding the community rec center.
I wish I had the video from so they actually can do 3D time-lapse simulations of them. The state brought that, so you can kind of see where it goes, but it's hydraulically high enough above, and when those things fail, they assume a rate of progression that it actually starts incising in on itself and fails pretty quickly. The Lutzenheiser gets overwhelmed, the Dry Cedar Creek gets overwhelmed as well. So both in that situation. It's not a lot of water, but it just hits all at once.
Yeah, that moves it up the progression for me quite a bit.
Well, it seems to me that from a budgeting standpoint, we ought to just follow what the lead is in terms of what's the most expeditious time to get it done.
Yeah,
and then we
more
do what
on the
we
timing
need
of
to
our
do.
staff and ability to do it than worrying about the budget.
Yeah, but we can, when that comes into focus, certainly look at options and figure out, what needs to be done. But, reserve-wise and stuff, it's not a huge project, so we're pretty confident that one way or the other we can make it work.
My feeling on that is I would rather model it around our ability to do it rather than trying to force our budget and then having our staff being unable to do it on time. So
I agree.
All right. Anything else? Any questions for Scott or for the HOA?
No, I can just comment about water. We have a drainage that runs behind my house, and I could tell you that last rainstorm we had, when water starts flowing, it can cause a lot of damage. I have about 4 inches of mud in the back of my backyard that I'm still trying to deal with. So
extra planting soil. That's how you're going to look at that.
Yeah, well, try digging that clay up, buddy. It sticks to the
it's
shovel
adobe, so
real
yeah.
Good, yeah.
All right. All right. If there's no other questions for Mr. Murphy, then are there any other staff comments? And seeing none, are there any other council comments? I just wanted to mention that the move from our old city hall to the new city hall is going really well. that the new City Hall area looks really great, and it's going to be a lot more approachable for our public. I'm looking forward to us finishing that project so we can move into our council chambers.
Well, I think too, all the persons that are here are supposed to go and get an armload of books and carry them to the new.
That's the price of being here, I guess.
I do have a question. Are little passes to get in?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
When will those go? Will we have to get new ones, or will the old one works? And Lisa, when can I come over to your office on a Friday and get my paperwork?
Yeah, we're in the process of getting those moved over. I think everybody on council, all of their cards will move over. There will be some people who have older ones that will need to reissue, but for the most part, give us till the end of the week and we'll have everybody dialed in.
And how long will our mailboxes continue to be in the old City Hall?
I've already packed them up and.
Forget it, Dave.
Later today.
I will send an email when they're in the new council office at the new City Hall.
Yeah.
Just let you know. Otherwise, any staff members can distribute council mail and I'll make sure you get it.
And do we still plan to open the new City Hall to the public on the 27th?
Yep, next week.
And are we going to do ribbon cutting or any kind of ceremony, or is just going to be shift the doors and call her good?
We hadn't planned a ribbon cutting for it at this time. I think kind of waiting to see what the next phase is for the project, and then depending on that, maybe we do a more of an opening celebration at this time, or maybe it waits until the next phase is completed. So we don't have one planned right now. But yeah, official closing of Old City Hall and opening of New City Hall starting next week. Yep. Almost all staff is over there now, pending city clerk and finance. They're moving over this week. And their CSTs will be moved over later this week and ready to full open over there next week.
And when we get done with all the move, will we be removing the letters that say City Hall from the old building?
I don't have it planned right now. I guess that's part of the, pending sale there, and all of those many items within City Hall and around City Hall that it's undetermined, I guess, right now, which ones are staying, which ones are.
Yeah, I just want to make the members of the public a little bit more aware so that those who don't follow us on media have the opportunity
So
there are signs up right now, and there will be in the future as well at the doors. So we've been giving people a heads up when they come into City Hall that we're moving, and we'll keep those signs up whenever.
yeah, there'll be signs posted in both locations, changed from what they are right now. They're directing people that's happening, but starting next week it'll say, Old City Hall is closed, new location here, and same with the new City Hall. We'll have signage on the door. We'll also have press releases going out this week. I believe the Daily Press is doing an article on it right now. They were over there taking pictures, so there'll be information being put out that way as well.
How about our notification board? Do we need to take any kind of action to show the relocation on that?
You do. Go ahead.
So we are going to have one big bulletin board in the vestibule by the 8 p.m. That'll be accessible 24/7. And so we'll start for the next set of meetings, we'll just start posting things there. If we don't have the bulletin board, we'll just tape them to the glass, but they'll all be there. And then of course, they're always posted on our website. I don't think we need to take another action to designate a posting place because it'll still be the bulletin boards at City Hall.
We're still compliant with our
website as the official.
Still compliant with the charter recommendations and requirements. Will we still continue to post on the bulletin board over by the ship's bell?
We won't.
Thank you.
The letters are not currently listed in the list of exclusions. So if we want to take those, I probably should know what the group desires, so I can at least try and give a friendly heads up to the other side in our transaction. We were just going to leave them at this point, as far as I know.
Yeah, I see a lot of the people coming and that they don't know what's going on and they don't pay much attention to what the social media is, and they're going to come up and see the lettering for City Hall and be confused. And just was kind of curious.
Am I to take that as a hint? Maybe we should take the letters down.
Let's wait and see, because we, like Jim mentioned, we have all the other things that are tied in with, on the closing date, items will be removed from the building. So I think we need to talk about process and everything, not just make that decision on the fly right now.
Yeah, I don't want to make a decision. I think that's more up to staff, what you've already got planned. So more curiosity than direction.
Thank you.
So if there is nothing else, then we will adjourn.
Thank you.
No, I was just looking, I was walking.
Yeah, I don't